So yeah, I've got a big pile of Dylan albums, which you can't see. Yes, I've just found Blood on the Tracks, Blonde on Blonde. That's the only one I really know. Really, I know Blood on the Tracks a bit. Although now obviously I know Highway 61 Revisited as well. Bob Dylan, the album Bob Dylan. I don't know if that's. I can't remember if that's really. Oh yeah, you got Fixing to Die and In My Time of Dying and all that. So that might be his first album, and not a compilation, I think. Freewheeling Bob Dylan. That's his second album, isn't it? With Blowing in the Wind on it. Mm-hmm. And Times They Are Changing. That's the next one, or maybe that's his second. I can't remember. And Bringing It All Back Home, which is that's the first transitional one. So they're all early, actually. Interesting, except for Blonde on Blonde. And then obviously what I've not got there is the period after Highway 61 Revisited and after Blonde on Blonde, where he stopped Rage Against the Machine. That's a thing, in that it by the 70s it's completely absent, which is a huge change really when you think about it. And he did go in some weird directions. He went kind of country. But in that period you've got All Along the Watchtower, which is amazing. All Along the Watchtower is an amazing thing. Even if you don't particularly like it, it is amazing. And obviously everyone likes the Hendrix one, but there is something about the sort of weird circular rhythm of the original, the way it sort of goes dun 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 dun, and it's something to do with cyclical change and all that. End of the world, the start of the new world, and it just goes round and it repeats, etc. But yeah, so we are reviewing
Blood on the Tracks.
Blood on the Tracks. This is his heavy album. Which is his return. Sorry, no, it's his second returning album. So he disappeared for a bit. Arguably lost his mojo. Word is loading. There we go. Yeah. So he returned with an okay album, and then this is the next one, and this is really the only other one people talk about. Okay, it's very Rolling Stone magazine, Mojo, Q magazine, that stuff. They like this album. It's that kind of thing. But people do talk about it for the right reasons, and the story goes it's about his breakup of his marriage, which he denies. But if you look at the lyrics, really? He also says it's a tribute to Chekhov. That's the guy from Star Trek, obviously, not the poet. But he says a lot of things. Bob Dylan is from the time of those, before he didn't know he had to do it.
I thought he's famous for saying basically nothing.
Well, yeah, he doesn't talk about what his songs are about, but I think when he does, he's from that time when when he became a musician, he didn't think he would have to do interviews. Why would you do interviews? And I'm sure he recognises that it kind of spoils the music if he did. So he's one of the. Robert Plant's the same. He just makes stuff up. It's just rubbish. But his son from that marriage, which he's talking about, says it is. And if you read the lyrics, it is. So there you go. And he was definitely having an affair with some record exec at the time. That's confirmed. So like I said, I've been enjoying his other 60s stuff. Famous songs in that there's only 2 albums I feel I'll get into the album, and that's Highway 61 and Blonde on Blonde. But I really like the individual songs of the early stuff. But now he's got old, and yet this is what Bob Dylan is like. This is what he's supposed to be like. So if you do a Bob Dylan impression, you do an impression of this album, and it is a great album. It's never going to have that edge. It's the same. It's still him, and it's still the acoustic guitar. But obviously, it's never going to have that edge because he's not Rage Against the Machine. That's such a thing. But it's loved by many, and it is. It's grown up Bob Dylan. That's what it is. And I'm handing the album now, although you can't see me due to connection errors.
I've got relatively little to say about this because I'm the same as you. I can't get into this one for some reason. Yeah, it's like, I think it's more retrospectively considered like his best album by some people. I don't know if that's like a pop, quite fashionable thing to do. Or everyone says Blonde on Blonde is his best album, but actually it's Blood on the Tracks.
Yeah, it's one of them. Yeah.
I don't really know where to start. I suppose you start with the first track, Tangled Up in Blue. It's a good song, as you say, but it's not like blow you out of the water good.
Yes.
And there seems to be something very crisp about, like the last one we did, Highway 61 Revisited, whatever it is.
Yeah.
There's something very crisp about it, and very sort of you can access sort of what's going on in the songs and sort of like take your take on it very relatively easily. And there's something about this that's just not as crisp and as accessible. It just sort of, I don't know if it's the way the vocals are mixed or whatever, but the poetry doesn't seem to be as, I'm sure the poetry is very good, but it's not as, it doesn't feel as forefront in the music to me.
Yes.
Which is a little bit disappointing after Highway 61, because we gave that a pretty glowing review, didn't we?
Yeah.
I'm sure somewhere along the line he's playing the harmonica and it's out of tune.
Well, it always is. Honestly, if you put Highway 61 back on, I think is it in tune? It's not in tune. It's perfect.
That's weird.
It's weird, isn't it? Yeah.
But I mean, I actually found it quite dry. I think it's Lily, Rosemary, and Jack of Hearts.
All right.
It's sort of like at the beginning, there's this little bit of harmonica. It didn't sound quite right.
Yeah. I mean, actually, it's Alanis Morissette. Really, there's not really that much difference. It's anyway, that's all he does.
Yeah. Apparently, I don't know. This might be in your notes, Kev, but apparently it was re-recorded, and the musicians that re-recorded it, the session musicians that re-recorded it, have never received credit.
I didn't know they're not on credit.
No,
I know it was re-recorded.
Credit.
Yeah, he wasn't happy with it and did it again.
Yeah. So apparently he taught the tune to the owner of a music shop, and the owner of the music shop taught the musicians, went in and recorded it, and that was it. They didn't get any credit on the album. They didn't have any credit since, not even like retrospective credit.
Yeah.
He's never mentioned it or anything like that. That kind of pisses me off for some reason.
Well, you're right. Yeah. I mean, that is what's the frippism? By virtue of standard practice. That's it. That is standard practice. You know, it's very common. Session musicians play on albums and are never credited. They just paid a fee, £200.
Yeah, and it's annoying because actually, his directions were very, very broad.
Yeah, exactly.
So it is their music, like they're making this up, sort of thing. They're not repeating, they're not repeating notes on a page.
Yeah.
They're actually making up to what they think would sound right, and that's becoming his music. I don't like that. That doesn't seem right to me.
It's not. I agree. Yeah. I mean, you think about it, Highway 61 Revisited. It's wrong. It's all over the place, and the fact that he said keep that. It was still them that did it.
Yeah.
So and everybody knows with Bob Dylan, it's as much about the performance as it is about the songs.
Yeah.
That's what people like the cover versions of his songs.
Yeah. So I mean I think just hearing that put me on the downer on the album straight away. I think that might be part of the Bowie thing. It was sort of like it was the revelation that there's actually normally a big music brain somewhere in the album actually writing quite a lot of the music, and it all gets basically the David Bowie trademark.
Yeah, and then David Bowie is on the cover.
Yeah, and David Bowie's this amazing artist that produces such a variation in music. He's always changing and adapting.
He's a chameleon.
He's just getting in new musicians. So yeah, I feel there's a little bit of that going on here, but this is one of his very big tracks, and as you say, albums, and as you say, it was sort of like a rebirth of Bob Dylan.
Yes.
He's been in a bit of a slump since then. And there are some good songs on there.
There are some great songs on there, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's quite varied. I think it is actually more varied than Highway 61. It's much less of an album. And there's all sorts of different types of Bob Dylaning. But some of it is great. You know, I do like Idiot Wind, and it does take you by surprise if you've got the album on and the first 2 tracks are Bob Dylaning. They're good Bob Dylan songs. But Idiot Wind is when he really starts sort of shouting. And there's a real vitriol in there, isn't there, of shouting at his wife. You can see why he doesn't want people to think that he's just shouting at his wife. He's probably quite embarrassed now.
I mean, he's completely failed on that front. Everyone assumes it's about the breakup of his relationship, even though he's denied it. Yeah,
I'm absolutely 100% convinced. There's stuff about paying alimony, and I know he has characters, but the characters are the things that were happening in his life.
I suppose that's the big difference in this album then from the last one. This is more autobiographical, although he denies it.
Yes, which is a thing he's not supposed to do, and has said.
Yeah.
He actually dislikes people who do that. But I suppose it was a thing he had to do, kind of thing. He had to vent. But it's not what he likes doing, and that's the problem. But obviously it gave us what is considered the last Dylan moment of awesomeness. You know, that's what it's supposed to be. It is interesting how whatever it was he was doing in the 60s, he couldn't do anymore. So it's not like, you know, obviously it's very common, obviously musicians burn out, don't they? They get told that they're gods when they're in their early 20s, and then they can just never get back there. They can never be that good again because they've been told how great they are. And then they obviously they sort of plunge into mediocrity. That's not really what happened with Bob Dylan. He just stopped doing it. It's like he never really knew what he was meant to be doing in the first place, which is a weird thing. But we'll talk about that next week, I suppose, with Infidels. So we'll jump forward into the 80s. Ugh.
Oh dear.
Mm-hmm. But there is a good anecdote around that time, which I'm going to talk about next week.
Cool.
Mm-hmm. So this, I'm going to give it 4 eggs. It is a borderline 3 eggs, though. But it is a 4-egg album because there's just really good stuff on there. I'm not one of these people.
There's no like. It doesn't feel like that much of a chore to listen through, if you know what I mean.
Oh well, yeah. It is the pleasing tones of Bob Dylan, even when he's sort of shouting.
Yeah,
it's really good for some reason.
So, yeah, I think it's a 4-egg album.
Yeah.
I'm sure this album is shrouded in mythology and stuff like that, which we've probably not covered.
Kinda. Yeah, I think we've covered the essence of what happened around. It's the music we've not really talked about, but the Bob Dylan songs.
What's the thing about this art teacher? You got involved with some art teacher or something like that who changed his perspective, and he says that it resulted in this album.
Oh, that rings a bell. I've forgotten about that. I did read about that. I can't remember what the details of it. Hang on, because I did sort of go around reading all the stuff on the internet, and kind of got nowhere. You know, when there's like lots of writing, but there's nothing.
Norman Rayburn, that's it. He sort of he got influenced by Norman Rayburn. Now, what that influence is that results in this, I don't know.
Yeah, so it was this painting guy. He went to his lessons, and he was really good because he just told everyone they were shit. This sounds great. So you get people going there just to get abused.
Very strange.
So anyway, Rayburn taught me how to see in a way that allowed me to do consciously what I unconsciously felt. When I started doing it, the first album I made was Blood on the Tracks. Everybody agrees it was pretty different. And what's different about it is there's a code in the lyrics. And also, there's no sense of time. Doesn't tell you anything. I think that's him just talking crap.
Yeah.
I think he liked the painting, and the painting made him feel creative. I think that's what it is.
Could be.
Yeah.
Could be. So what's the one we're doing next week then? Infidels, did you say?
Infidels, yeah. 83.
Oh. I'll write that
Bob
down.
Dylan in the 80s. No, that's the Wilburys. He didn't do anything else in the 80s. That's not wrong. That's wrong.
Are we doing a Travelling Wilburys album then, Kev?
We should, yes. Although it is much more 80s than you remember it. It's got a drum machine going cool shh on it. Horrible.
Okay.
Cool. Right, thumbs.
Yeah, pair of thumbs.
See you
And
next week.
See you next week.